All right, everyone, and welcome back. It's good to be back on. I said goodbye to 2020 like we all did, I'm sure. And one thing that I realized, TPO 52 with Peyton Keller and all this, and I realized 52, we come out once a week. There's 52 weeks in a year. Holy crap, TPO has been on air for essentially a year now. It's our anniversary episode. And so I wanted to honor that. And I could think of no better way to do that than bring on the person that opened that door for TPO to happen and sort of guided me along the process to getting to hosting it. And so, of course, we have the one and only, the highly esteemed, our supreme leader, George Hariri. Welcome back, man.
Just all the words right there. Oh, you know how to make me uncomfortable. First of all, I want to give credit to two people here So Richard Lowe, the name, The Pursuit of Ownership, and the concept behind the show was not mine.
Yes,
that's Richard's, and yourself, right? I think TPO for us was the opportunity to go back and repair something that we felt we left unsaid, and we trusted you with that role. And the feedback we've gotten as the most downloaded segment of our show, and the response from the audience and the experience listening is that 52 episodes in, Tyler Tilbert has killed it. So, thank you, Tyler. And really, really excited for what we have moving forward. And this was our first experience of putting a non-partner as a host of a segment on air. And it showed us that we can do it. And that, people in our audience that have listened, then have worked closely with us, are then ready to share. And you were, and you are. And so thanks for everything, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I really appreciate that. And of course, much appreciation to Richard, the founder, for also founding this series. I was so excited when the idea came along, and was honored that you guys pegged me for it. And I think the reason that I sort of look at you as sort of that, when I look back at the genesis of this, I think of you is because you sort of, I was riding on your coattails, right? You come on here, you're basically doing the interview. I'm sort of auxiliary to it, and I sort of get groomed into it. And then you sort of, threw me out the nest, and we saw if I could fly. And I have done something similar with Peyton Keller, to whom I attribute a lot of the show's success. He's come into his own as well. And he does a great show, and he's been doing them solo for a while now. And I'm super proud of him as well. There's a lot of people to thank, and I've stood on the shoulders of giants, and I've been really happy to do it. And another thing I wanted to mention before we get too far into the TPO stuff is another thing that was at the core of my development as a podcast host was also my development as a coach. And about halfway through the TPO series, we started the TPO Task Force, which was a student group coaching program specifically for dental students of all different classes who wanted to prepare themselves for ownership. And we actually just wrapped up our last call last night. It was right before this episode. So yeah, it's everything's just beautifully aligning and capitulating. And so I wanted to actually shout all of them out. There's not too many of them, so it won't take too long. But Chad Casebeer, Kirby Fosnot, Peyton Keller, of course, Spencer Deal, Charlie Estrada, Jared Loftus, Jared Safsky, and Louise Velos. They all stuck it out till the end, and the progress that they all made was just wonderful. And I'm going to get might get them to kind of share some things on the show, or maybe take some excerpts from our calls and stuff, just to kind of show people the sort of high level conversations that they had access to, and all the progress they made was just absolutely insane. We had people that were starting this before they even started dental school, D0s, and all the way through D4s, and we all learned so much and changed so much. That was really awesome. But that's a bit of an aside. But to get back to
I'll
it,
say my 3 calls with your group, very impressive. You
amazing.
Could tell the level of conversation that I was having. It was like we're talking multi-practice ownership and stuff. I'm like, wow.
Yeah,
it was cool.
Yeah, we had another big dog come on at one point. We had experts coming on from different walks of dentistry, and one of them was Perrin Desports from Tusk Dental.
Yeah,
and they consult on private debt funded group practices and such, and obviously they have pretty high level conversations with very entrepreneurial dentists. And that call was like awesome. I mean, really, really awesome. They brought amazing questions and carried them very competently, and he was super blown away by it too. So, I mean, just giving students access to conversations like that. I mean, that to know that I was kind of, a part of
quarterback.
What that ended up being. Yeah, I was quarterbacking that. Exactly.
Yeah.
I was Tom Brady in the pocket. And that was insane for me. So,
awesome.
to have seen that gone as well as it did, along with 1 year of TPO.
Yeah.
I mean,
This is almost exactly a year.
yeah,
And
almost
so for the
exactly.
topic
Yeah.
of this episode, I really want to go back to, I want to make sure to touch on why we started TPO in the first place,
Yes.
which was we recorded seasons 1, 2, and 3. And what people do when they pick up our show is they start at the beginning. And that's why we released episode 0 on New Year's Day, which
Mhm.
is kind of like, hey, catching you up on 4 years of practices. And they listen to the whole thing. And there's so many things we missed in seasons 1, 2, and 3
Yeah.
that we never got the opportunity. We can't go back and like insert new episodes. So we created the Pursuit of Ownership, which is a recurring segment as we
Mhm.
get updated knowledge to share it with our audience around topics related to pre-ownership. Because our thoughts on if I were to re-record season 2 right now, it'd be like 16 episodes long and it'd be way better. And it's like, but it's 40 something episodes or 50 hours of content. And it's like all over the place. And I don't love it looking back on it, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah, and it's really like it's one of our best seasons that people always talk about liking the most, and
Yeah.
it's the one that we consider just so imperfect that we just wish we could go back and change
Yeah,
so
there's
much.
so
But
much wrong stuff that we said and like overemphasize certain topics, underemphasized others. Yeah, I don't think we did it.
yeah,
We did it very well, to be honest. Like we did it really well at the time. That's the best we could at the time. We tried our best and like people could tell. But I think that the ability to sort of recapitulate these topics
yeah,
and talk about them using our analytics-based practice management philosophy, plus high growth and practices
right,
and our
right.
understanding of ownership, add a whole nother perspective that it makes it much more
Mhm.
powerful.
Yeah, it's funny because we spend a lot of time trying to get people to unlearn things that they've learned from dental school and the
Yeah.
outside, and now
Let's
we're
unlearn
trying
the
to get
things we taught them.
yeah, sorry. That's how long we've been around now. So in a way,
Yeah.
that's an accomplishment. But at the same time, we're just kind of kicking ourselves for a lot of that. But it's been a journey of our own self discovery too. So
Yeah.
I'm really happy to be part of that ongoing segment and contributing and keeping the zeitgeist up to date. So yeah, it's been great. So in the spirit of that, I was hoping we could get into some topics and get a little more granular and just talk about some specific high points, some misconceptions that you think
Yes.
that were born in season 2 that you feel that really need to be addressed. And maybe we talked about them on TPO so far, but kind of want to set the record
Well,
straight.
can we do all the pre-ownership seasons? So seasons 1,
Oh, of
2,
course.
and
Sure.
3,
Yeah, sure.
because I think that would be just the discussion I'd really want to have.
That's a good
So,
point. Yep.
so
Hmm.
season 1 is ownership right for me. I feel like
Hmm.
the basis of that show, yes, it's right for you. That I agree with. I think the thing I would have liked to have added to season 1 that we didn't was vision of what
Right.
type of ownership is right
Yeah.
for you. Specifically, solo practice ownership, group practice ownership, or multi-practice ownership, right? Like there
Hmm.
are different categories that you can go down and they're for different people. And it's funny because we missed in the episodes the same things we missed in our lives because we were doing, we were essentially recording it with what we thought was best.
Right.
And, for me, right, the biggest miss was I thought I wanted to be a solo practitioner. Well, me and my ex-wife now, but wife at the time, we just wanted to be no associate. And that was a pretty big miss because, like, obviously, on multiple levels, right? But like, uh, but like the idea that we bought a practice and it worked out that we had to have 8 ops so we could switch into this type of
Yeah.
model. But if we had bought a 6, we could have very easily bought a 6 op practice with the same financials. And then now it's a lot harder for us to pivot into the group practice that I now have, right?
Yeah.
I
100%.
have. And so it's like, it's I think that was be like the biggest miss I would say in season 1. So I want to spend a good amount of time with a lot of stuff I was talking to TPO task force about around
Mhm.
how can you tell as a dental student or as a pre-owner, what path is the right one for you? I feel like that's an important
Mm.
topic to address. And that's what we missed in season 1.
Yeah, that is so much of the work that we ended up doing in the coaching group is just trying to help people figure out what their vision was. And there's very few of them. I mean, it's a minority of them that, their vision is really the same practice model it was to begin with.
No, never.
Um,
We did
all they got bigger. Nothing ever got smaller.
well,
That's the trend though.
but
Yeah.
why is that the trend, right? Because you don't think it's possible. And
Right.
then you see that it's actually like people get mad when I say fairly straightforward, but there is a proven path to get places that you don't think is possible. And then when you see the proven path, you're like, oh, okay, like, yeah, I could go bigger than that. And you allow yourself to believe what you actually want. And
Right.
so, in this case, we did the same thing with the group coaching program where we had everyone come in. I think like we started with like maybe half solo, half group. And I think there was maybe only one solo at the end. And
Yeah.
everyone else,
Exactly.
we had
Yeah.
people like, we had this guy and he had this acquisition opportunity lined up, like handshake deal with seller when he started the program for a solo office. And he actually backed out of that deal
Mhm.
to spend more time looking for a group practice that fit his vision when he realized it. And the program offered him the opportunity to not make, and that's like what pre-owner mastermind is now, like the one that you're running.
Exactly.
It's like the
Exactly.
continuation of that work of working with pre-owners on refining vision and also accelerating their timeline to ownership, kind of that combination. So, that's, I think, really, really important. And that's what was really, really missed in
Mhm.
season one. So, I sorry, I interrupted you. So I
No,
forgot.
no, no, no. That was a really good point. And I think, when you talk about vision, I think that people make these goals that are sort of an average of, what they dream of wanting and what they think is like reasonably like really possible. And then they kind of like find themselves somewhere in the middle. And then they find things out that sort of raise that floor of what they actually think is possible.
Yeah.
And it more closely approximates what they really want. And they can become more vocal about that and less reticent about sounding, I don't know, too audacious, perhaps. And before you know it, people are like, yeah, I want 8 ops, 10 ops. I want multiple associates. I want to reduce my clinical days in the first few years.
Yeah.
And, to begin with, a lot of people don't come out that way. And it's so interesting to see how that transforms.
I think we're the, you know, I don't know, I would say first. I don't think we're the first, but we have definitely made it more mainstream, the idea of cutting back your clinical hours substantially past what people thought while still owning your practice. I think
Right.
that concept we're making a lot more common. And so as people see that becoming possible, they'll start realizing that they might want that more than they realized. But if you
Yeah.
don't ever watch somebody do that, you never think that that's possible. You'll never really be able to entertain it for yourself. And so that's kind of what
Mhm.
we try to accomplish by showing other people's stories and showcasing in sort of mastermind type environments. It really
Yeah.
helps to sort of see that like, oh, people are doing this. It's possible. I can do it too.
Yeah, and I think the thing that was really hard for people to look away from, at least the members of the group, is it wasn't just the idea that they could step back clinically; it's the idea that they could have the choice to do so.
Yeah.
It wasn't that they needed to; it was just that it being the practitioner in the practice and having the practice on their back wasn't something that needed to happen for the thing to work. Very few people could really double down on that vision for the foreseeable future because they wanted some option for unforeseeable things or changes of mindset. They wanted that option to be able to step back whenever they wanted to, and they just get to go to work. Not, they don't have to go to work, right?
Yeah.
And that's just one really big pro of group practice ownership. That's just it's tough to measure up to in solo practice ownership.
Yeah, totally. And I don't want this to be like a biased episode where we only talk about the
It's
benefits
not.
of group. So
It's
let's
not.
let's kind of cater the conversation back to,
Sure. Sure.
if we go to, how do I know if I'm a solo? How do
Mhm.
I know if I'm a group practice owner?
Yep.
Let's just talk about those two, like of a single
Yeah.
site. I own one practice. Is it going to have multiple dentists or am I going to be the only dentist there? So you navigating those conversations with the people on in the task force, what types of things were you talking about with them? And then I'll kind of go into what I usually do.
So I almost always started with what sort of problems do you prefer to have? It's because like you can't eliminate your life of problems. You just sort of change the nature of them and you cater it to what you can enjoy, what you can get some satisfaction from, and perhaps what you're adept at handling. And that what that kind of boils down to is, are you good with people problems? Are you good with staff problems? Are you good with leadership problems? Or are you more catered towards uh, the crown mold seat or, sort of like clinical issues, right? Or
Yeah.
things that you are doing wrong and you need to correct within yourself and it's more internal. And I think that was a basal thing that people could sort of source from, even if they hadn't started student clinic yet, they could source things out of their lives to sort of inform that conversation. How do you usually approach it?
So by the way, I absolutely love, love, love everything about the way you had said that. So when I have it two ways. So that's one of them. I
Okay.
usually say pick your miss. So
Okay. Yeah.
it's golf terminology. So in
Right.
golf, you don't like pick the
Right. Right.
ideal result, you pick the mistake.
Yeah.
And so it's the same thing, right? Picking your problems. There's going to be a miss. It's just where do you want it? And
Yeah.
so I love that. And then the second thing I always have them do is I have them look for what excites them.
Yeah.
Like,
That's
when
great.
like you're like, yes, today was awesome. Like high five, you go home, you're super excited about your day. What leads to that reaction?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, and for me, and this is where I missed, like this was my big miss, was it was getting the eval. It was shared
Hmm.
practices. It was practice management. It was learning a new way of scheduling. It was that's my whole life in dental school. That was what got me jazzed and excited was
Yeah.
practice management.
Right.
And I somehow ignored all of those signs. And I like if I placed implants in dental school. I did beautiful, I mean beautiful, quote unquote beautiful. I did what I thought was good looking at the time, cosmetic anterior work with composites. I did like stuff that other dentists get excited about. And for me, I never once
Into
took
it.
a photo of it. I mean, maybe a couple times I took photos of implant stuff just because it's kind of like the like bragging thing you do in school.
Yeah.
But
How
like,
convenient that you don't have to show photos of this beautiful work you say you did.
oh, I have photos on like in Axiom
Okay.
of the stuff, but like I never
Right. It's
took
an
it on my
axiom.
phone.
Okay.
I never cared enough to like take
Sure.
a picture of the Axiom photo and like carry it with me and say like, "Hey, my mom's a dentist." I never once said, "Hey, mom, look at this filling I did on 8 when this patient came in and chipped their tooth." You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
like,
Okay.
but a lot of my friends like that stuff.
Yeah.
And I was different in that way. And I didn't ever notice or I never cared to look for ways that of my peers, of 140 dentists that I graduated with, you know, where am I uniquely passionate and excited about? I never asked myself that question. If I were to ask myself, hey, compared to all of my classmates, a bunch of dentists, where am I uniquely passionate and excited? I would have been able to very quickly see I am very uniquely passionate and excited compared to my classmates about practice management. Like
Right.
no one spends as much time with on me than me on that. And so I would have been able to predict the future and say that that's not going to change. So I should cater my career in a way that makes
Yeah.
sure I get enough of that.
Yeah.
And that's group, right? That's like, you know, entrepreneurial stuff.
Yeah.
And if I was like, I love, you know, patient interactions, or I love getting to know my patients, or I love
Or
like being
nailed that
efficient
case. Yeah.
clinically, like I
Yeah.
did that crown really fast. That was super exciting. Like
Right.
of my
It is.
classmates, I
Yeah.
focused most on my speed clinically, or like whatever. Like compared to all of your classmates, or compared to all of your dentists that you know of, if you're an associate, compared to your peers, there is something everyone listening is uniquely passionate and excited about compared to their immediate group around them of classmates or dentists or whatever. And those tell you things about what you want in the future because those things don't, your passions don't change.
Right. Right.
They that's you. What money and opportunity and all that stuff offers, it amplifies the things that you like. So for me,
Yeah.
right, as I was in practice ownership, as I started to financially be able to cut back, I kept doing it because I wanted to do more and more of the thing I like. But like
Hmm.
if you really like it, then you won't want to stop doing it because you like it. So your
Yeah.
desires and your passions and the areas of dentistry that you're interested in never change.
Yeah, and I think the irony of all that is that, while you were being this super passionate, dedicated person, student, like studying practice management and getting really psyched about it while everyone else was like, why is this person on spreadsheets in class or not in class? Um, I believe you had in mind that you were going to go into solo practice ownership,
Yeah,
work your tail off and, retire in X number of years and not even like be in dentistry anymore. It was just like, go be the super solo, absolutely kill it, break your back doing it and then get out.
yeah.
Right.
My
Like that
goal
was,
was
that
to
was kind
produce
of the idea.
$600, $1,600 an hour,
Yeah.
and that was my goal. And the reason that was my goal is because from all of my spreadsheets, I knew that that was the way for me to be the most profitable as a dentist was to do everything myself, like on a
Mhm.
percent of profits basis. And
Yeah.
then I got up to $1,200 an hour and I realized I hated it. Like
Yeah.
me with my own two hands producing $1,200 an hour, I was like, this is the least fun I'm having.
Yeah.
And then I knew, okay, my initial hypothesis of because I like business, making the most money in the most efficient way is not for me. And then I
Yeah.
found a different way
Right.
to be happy. But yeah, I mean, it took me being stubborn and like thinking like I wanted something that in fact I didn't. And so
Okay.
it
Yeah,
took
that's that's a good nuance too, because you say that you arrived at that because you looked at your spreadsheets and you found out that was the most profitable number and you designed the number, but like what you designed as the path to get there was something that did not actually give you any passion.
exactly.
And that's where you erred
I was
really.
passionate about the process of figuring it out and the
Yes,
process
not the
like
doing, how
I
you chose to
was
do it. Yeah.
exactly. I was like passionate about all the practice management wrinkles that needed to be added in there, like, you know, expanded function assistance, 3 hygienists, you know, implant process efficiencies, all the practice management challenges that I had to get to $1,200 an hour of my personal production was the
Yeah.
things I was passionate about. But the actual doing of $1,200 an hour of dentistry, I did not enjoy. And
Yeah.
so once I got there and the challenge, and it wasn't over, but it was like, okay, I've done enough of this to know that like I'm less happy the more I produce. And so like getting to
Hmm.
$1,600 an hour, like it wasn't really 16 wasn't a hard number for me. It was more like just over 1,000 an hour personally. I
Hmm.
think I was like doing over 10 a day. And they're like, okay, after doing over 10 a day, like I think I figured out that this isn't what I want. It
Yeah.
only took me a month of that too. It was a month of that. I was like, this is terrible.
Yeah. Usually it takes like a decade. So.
Yeah, it was only a month of this. I'm like, this is the
Right.
worst month I've ever had.
Yeah.
And yeah, so
Okay. So what we have then is you ask yourself what kind of problems are you adept at, and what excites you. And another thing I want to kind of tag on to that second part is you were talking about, you were the spreadsheets person, you were the process person, the systems person, all these other things. But that's not all there is to ownership, right? There's a huge, huge leadership component. There's working with these people, there's
yes.
leading people, there's managing teams, being able to manage their goals, keep them motivated, cultivate a culture. How do you learn about that? Because like a lot of dental students, have been in an
Yeah.
academic pipeline for a long time and they have not necessarily been in positions of leadership. Maybe they were the person in the group that did all the work, but like, were they necessarily a leader? How do they search that with themselves? What kind of questions can you ask if you haven't had that kind of exposure?
I love this. So Tyler, your show right now is like the pursuit of ownership. And your
Hmm.
audience is pre-owners. So like pre-owner associates and pre-owner dental students. And
Yeah.
so I almost think that you have the ability to go all the way up to season 5, leadership, and talk
Yeah.
about topics that are 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, right? Is ownership right for me?
Hmm.
Acquisitions, startups, case acceptance, and leadership. Because those are all things that you can prepare for ownership in.
Very true. Very true.
So that preface to be said that Matt and I actually just addressed this. We recorded Practice Underwater, comes out before this one, and so what we had talked about was you can do leadership development through courses and books and all those things, and those are great. But until you actually have challenges and experience the discomfort, it's the leadership development happens. You have to have problems come up to grow as a leader. Like
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to grow as a leader without any like you can theoretically grow in your like potential as a leader by reading a lot of books.
Of
But
course.
until you actually make those mistakes and correct them and create structures and get stronger as a leader and be better at managing discomfort. So yes, there's two sides of this. There's one side where you have to be able to have the leadership principles in place, like how to talk to people,
Mhm.
you have all those skills. Like those are leadership books can help you with those, and there's plenty of leadership books, and they're all very similar. And then the second side of it is you have to be able to experience, you have to be willing to experience discomfort. And this is the skill
Okay.
that can be practiced pre ownership. I'm willing to do uncomfortable things. Like in clinic, I'm willing to do something uncomfortable. I'm willing to potentially mess something up that I'm like going a little bit further than I normally do
Right.
because I'm
Right.
in a safe environment and I'm okay if the patient's upset because I need to manage that. Like you need to practice those uncomfortable situations. That's really where you're going to grow as a leader. That's growth as a leader is so much to do with managing discomfort. It's incredibly
Yeah.
important to be able to
Yours
manage
and other
discomfort.
people's. Yeah.
Yeah. So your own discomfort internally and other people's discomfort and dissatisfaction. So the more discomfort and dissatisfaction, both with yourself and with others, you can ethically create, you know, is a great idea to grow as a leader. So the books plus creating discomfort with yourself and others is going to grow your leadership. And I'm not saying to like
Okay.
stir the pot for the purpose of growing as a leader. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying put yourself in positions where you are managing either your own discomfort or other people's discomfort and dissatisfaction.
Right. And I think, that kind of boils down to just being bold, right?
Yeah.
Like going for things that other people aren't going for in dental school.
Yeah.
I mean, trying to get new patients or tackling a larger case or, just getting into something that people, at your stage aren't just because they might be a bit skittish or they want to put it off or they want to wait until they have more experience. I think that that's a really, simple way that you can do it within dental school. It's a
Well,
kind of
and
natural.
think of on the flip side of that, the extracurricular activities that people do, whether they're associates or dental students, like, if you're in church, like
Oh,
speaking
sure.
at church,
Yeah.
like giving
Yeah.
a passage or something like that. I'm not religious, so like I don't really know the language,
Mhm.
but like,
Mhm.
speaking public speaking practice in church, or like, leading a group of friends where you normally wouldn't do that, like getting out of your social box as well.
Yeah.
Well, it's the skill of getting uncomfortable is a skill that can be applied to dental school. It can be applied to social
Yeah.
situations. It can be applied to
That's huge.
exercise, like working out. There's
Hmm.
a lot of different applications for that same
That's
skill,
good.
but the ability to push yourself beyond discomfort and push yourself to take risks and be bold and grow, like it's the growth, it's a skill of growth, getting
Yeah.
uncomfortable, growing as a result, that will help you no matter what you do, especially practice
Hmm.
ownership.
Yeah, as a message to listeners, if there's anything in the back of your mind as you're listening to George go on about discomfort that is sort of coming up and you're suppressing it because you're like, no, I'm not going to do that thing.
Yeah,
That
do
might
that thing,
actually be the thing.
exactly that thing you have to do. So like if it's
That's probably the
singing
thing.
in front of your church or
Yeah.
like anything terrifying, like,
Yeah.
okay, everyone listen for a minute, take a minute, think, I definitely would never do blank. That's what you have to do.
Crap.
No, not
Or
drugs,
cocaine.
like skydiving or like,
You know,
anything safe. Safe.
yeah.
Skydiving, I don't know if it's safe or not. I'm not
It's
going to
actually very
comment on that
safe.
one way or
It's
the
very
other.
safe, actually.
I'm
It's
not
very safe.
commenting on that one way or the other,
You'll see.
but I will not see. So
That's actually my thing though. Like that was one of the things like when I was starting to like try and confront fear and discomfort and like
uh-huh.
learn how to get over and work myself through it was skydiving. And I did it.
You went skydiving? Cool.
Yeah. I have a fear of heights. I can't be higher than 10 or 12 feet without like some pretty serious vertigo.
Wow.
Yeah. And I did that. Yeah.
Good to you. Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Liberating. Still very afraid of heights, but I can process it better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm also afraid of heights, and I sent you a
Mhm.
video of me jumping off a cliff
Yeah.
in
That was big,
Sedona.
right?
Yeah.
That was big for you.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that was big for me too. So I did that.
Yeah.
I did some cliff jumping, and
Yeah.
very safe cliff jumping, but cliff jumping. And I felt all the things of fear, and I said, "This is just fear," and then I went.
Yeah.
And it's that
Yeah.
skill of labeling fear and saying,
Mhm.
"Okay, I have to have a difficult conversation with my staff member. This is just fear. You
Yeah.
go have it." Right?
Yeah.
That's how it tangibly helps you in business. But
Mhm.
it takes using any opportunity in your life to build that skill set of being able to be uncomfortable that will help you combined with the leadership knowledge. It's the two combination of the two. You can't have one or the other. You can't just be like a lunatic and doing all these crazy things. Like you also have to have the business acumen and the leadership skills behind it. It'll
Right. Of
just
course.
amplify your knowledge and allow you to actually implement it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that, you talked about how discomfort is oftentimes just like going into newer situations or,
Mhm.
just less comfortable ones. And a lot of that just kind of comes with, the whole like the idea that courage is not the absence of fear, but rather the presence of it, but being able to act in spite of it. And I think that's really what it is. You learn to carry yourself through that and recognize fear as a somatic sensation. And you're just,
Can I add something?
please.
So practice getting financially uncomfortable. So
Oh, I do that all the time.
I know you do, but that's why I believe a lot in your
Yeah.
success, right? But like
Um,
I think, think about it. There has been nobody that's been successful in practice ownership without investing money in something to
big
make them
time.
successful. So
Yeah.
whether that's a proper lawyer, when you're doing like, you're going to hear the price of the lawyer. Like I paid 13 grand in legal fees when I bought my practice, and like there's a lot of expenses, right? Like, we obviously are an expense as well. If you want to use one of our services, that's uncomfortable for people, but like no one's ever made it somewhere without spending money on stuff. And so
Mhm.
there's a financial discomfort as well that you've got to get over. And so look at your current income situation right now and pick something that you think could give you something you're looking for, an opportunity to grow, a great experience, something that you think you'll get that's a little bit financially uncomfortable for you. Not
Yeah.
saying be irresponsible, but just a little bit financially uncomfortable, but like will offer a tangible benefit to your life and growth, and
Mhm.
do that thing, because that will really help you have healthy mindset around money as an owner. Because like I always knock dentists all the time about marketing. Like the
Uh,
biggest scarce minded the dentists are so scarce minded, and so they can never get past that hurdle of investing in something that's going to grow their practice, because they need to be like guaranteed the growth and the profit in order for them to invest, which essentially like they're not willing to take risk, right? And they're not willing to take financial risk.
yeah.
And so you need to like financial risk is a very important skill
Yeah.
for a practice owner, the ability to take financial risks for the long-term benefit of your practice.
Mhm.
Like that's one of the biggest things in growth, are the people that are able to front load it and put that time and money in now, understanding that it'll pay off for years to come.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the big thing. And so, that's the thing I love about the students that did your TPO task force. Like it's very affordable for a student, But at the same time, the skills they got, and now like they understand like how much they got from it. And so
Mhm.
they know next time, when they're confronted with, like, they're going to keep growing at an accelerated pace, which is going to help them their whole
For
career
sure.
because
Yeah.
they've practiced that exercise of getting financially uncomfortable for the purpose of personal
Mhm.
development.
Yeah, no, I think that's a wonderful point. And I think being able to, increase your appetite for risks and understand that, those are really what are going to confer, wins over time. And putting yourself in that situation is a really good idea. And we're not necessarily encouraging people to be reckless or overpay for things, but I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah,
I
Matt
hadn't really
encouraged me
thought
to
about it,
put
but
an amount of money in Bitcoin right now, for that same reason. So
I was,
Bitcoin is exploding,
yeah,
and he was
40K
like,
maybe 40K as of
yeah,
today. Broke
he
40.
said, he's like, dude, just put money in Bitcoin. I'm like, Matt, it's uncomfortable for me. And he goes, well, just
Good.
put an amount that you're uncomfortable. Like, just put like a kind of a baseline amount. And then over time, you just keep getting more and more comfortable with whatever
Yeah.
your investment strategy is. So you'll be able to put more and more money in it. So I'm starting with, an amount that I told him I'd be willing to just lose. And it was more than he had in it already. And so it was
Yeah.
like,
Uh,
like your ability to, that's just for me exercises of, financial risk.
mhm.
I'm, like I bought a car for my practice because I was willing to stomach financial risk. Like it, it helps you out a lot in your career. It's a very
Yeah.
important skill.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, I was already trying to insert Bitcoin into the conversation, and you did it very gracefully. So I appreciate that.
So
Um,
yeah,
yeah,
I got
but
to buy it before this episode comes out so that I can
for
capitalize on all the people that are going to buy it as a result of this episode.
yeah. Well, I mean, let's just remember the last time that Matt and I tried to talk you into Bitcoin was about 2 days ago, and I think that was the first day that it broke 34K, and 40K was today.
Yeah. So long story short,
So
let's move on from Bitcoin.
I
This is not a
know.
Bitcoin
I'm
podcast.
sorry.
It's not going to be a Bitcoin
It's
podcast.
not. Matt and I are working on that. We're
I'm
working on a
putting this in
crypto
the realm of
podcast, but
politics. This is not allowed. This is economic speculation. We're not allowing it.
it is. And by the time this episode comes out, it may have already crashed. So.
George will have lost a lot of money. Yeah.
And that will have increased his appetite for risk. And that is, to bring it around and to show that we're not completely off on a tangent.
I've been listening to the Dentist Money Show since the very beginning. And one of the things that drew me to Dentist Advisor's philosophy of financial advising was this thing called the elements. They have taken your complex financial situation and broken it down into these 12 easy to understand categories that allow you to see where you're at right now, where you want to go, and the steps along the way. When I first learned about the elements, I actually thought, you know what? I'm just going to create a Google Doc of this for myself and track it on my own. However, I am lazy and there's just not enough time, and there's really more to it than I initially understood. Fortunately, Dentist Advisors is now building the Elements app that allows you to get organized, analyze your situation like a pro, and ultimately make smart financial decisions that can be validated by a human financial advisor via chat in the app. I, Richard Lowe, I am a paying beta user of the Elements app. And if you want to be part of this exclusive early beta access group, Dentist Advisors has put together a combination of three things. First, they are holding a weekly virtual class to help you learn the fundamentals of personal finance using the Elements app. Next, you get early access to the app at an incredible price available only to early beta users. Finally, like I mentioned before, you'll also have access to advisors via chat within the app to help guide your journey. If you want to be part of this early access beta, go to dentistadvisors.com/shared beta. Once again, to lock this in today, like I've done, go to dentistadvisors.com/shared beta.
So yeah, we really went along with that point, didn't we?
Yeah.
So I want to move on to another bigger topic that you might have for, something that we want to help people unlearn that we may have taught them in seasons 1 through 4. What else do you got for that?
Season 2. So that was season 1 and season 5. So
Okay.
we've done 1 and 5. And
Okay.
season 2 is the importance of valuation. I think looking back on season 2, I really,
Oh, yeah.
really, like, wow, we spent like 8, 9 episodes discussing valuation.
Yeah.
Like, what a waste of airtime. Like, oh my gosh, such a waste of airtime. And my feelings about the topic have totally changed. So,
We'll talk about how you talked about it before, and then we'll talk about how you're talking about it now.
So yeah, I'm going to talk about my experience of the whole thing.
Okay.
So you can see how I was taught, what I did.
Okay.
And so I met Hunter Smith, and Hunter Smith is the guy that was all over season 2. And he introduced me to this concept that practices are priced for the most part based on what dentists will pay for them, which for the most part is based on a percentage of collections. So for the most part, they're all priced wrong. And there's a much better way to price them, which is percentage of or multiple of cash flow. And so I learned early on in my D2 year of dental school that if you learn how to evaluate practices, you'll be able to sift the good opportunities by finding the ones that are priced below market, or they're priced up, like they're worth more than they're priced at. So then you buy those. That was the operating idea that we had with season 2, was like, I'll look at the cash flow of the practice, right? I get random financials. I don't think twice. I throw them in the spreadsheets. I see like, what is it priced at? What's it worth to me? And there's always a gap there because of the broken paradigm in dentistry. And so the gap can either be, it's not worth nearly as much as they're charging, or it can be, it's worth more than they're charging. So in my practice's case, hope my sellers never hear this, but when I ran those numbers, my practice was worth like way more than they said they wanted, which they wanted 81% of collections. So it's not like they didn't want an appropriate amount. Like they wanted a healthy sum.
Many people would think that's like overpriced.
Yeah. So the average dentist on the Facebook groups and all that stuff, they would say like 81% of collections, like, offer 75, it's like, but I did that. And the practice was worth over 100% of collections if you used a multiple of EBITDA, like one of the things we talk about in that season. So using that advice, I offered exactly what they asked, and I felt like I got a steal, even though I got them above what they could have gotten in the market. For me, I felt like it was a steal because of the way I thought about it. So have I adequately explained the context that we kind of recorded season 2 under? Or is there more information that I need to add there? Like, you look at the financials of the practice, you see the cash flow, and then you see, you assess your own value, and then you compare that to the market so that you can see, is it underpriced, overpriced, and then you try to buy the practice that is worth as much as, try to buy a large cash flowing office that's worth more than the purchase price. That was kind of the pretense of season 2.
I would say that, and also to address just kind of like a lot of the expectations people kind of come into, like with the coaching program and things that people seem like really interested in, is like, they want spreadsheets, they want financials, they want to plug all this stuff in. And by the way, like, we do that stuff. Like,
we do that. Like, our due diligence service includes this, but I'm not knocking the process. Like, the process of analyzing a practice financially, the financial due diligence we do on an office, that process has not changed. It's the importance of it. We thought it was the most important thing. That's how we recorded season 2, because we dedicated the most episodes to that. We talked about it the most. Everyone else is like, I want to prepare for practice ownership by learning how to value practices. That was the problem we created in the world, is we taught everyone, by preparing for practice ownership, you need to look at, because I had looked at how many practices, I don't even know, and way too many. And I ran all these numbers and spreadsheets, and at the end of it, it's like, I don't even look at the P&Ls anymore when I look at a practice. I'm looking at the production report, because to the thing I've learned, and I think so that's the one thing we got wrong. And the second thing we got wrong was telling you not to change anything. So we told you, buy the practice, don't change anything, right? That was kind of the advice, correct?
Yeah. Well, yeah, if it works, don't fix it.
Yeah, if it works, don't fix it. Those were the two things that we said.
We say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it down here in the South. But
yeah, but we did not say it like that on air.
I did,
because no one would listen. I said it like that. And so
I actually have a really like serious Southern drawl, and George forces me to bury it on air.
Yeah, no, that's unacceptable. So, I think those are the false pretenses that we recorded season 2 under. And then we got into ownership. And I think the thing that changed for us was seeing the value of practice growth. Like, growth changes everything financially. It changes, like, think about this. If I buy a practice and it's doing $1 million in collections, and I have $800,000 of debt on it. So you have 2 practices doing $1 million in collections, right? Both priced at $800K. Which one do you pick? Well, what's that next layer of information, right? I'm holding my hands up like this. Tyler's making fun of me, but you can't pick it based on that. So how would you know?
Yeah.
We argue that we actually don't look for the practice with the most collections or the best cash flow. We look for the practice that's going to grow the fastest into your vision. So we take our mistake from season 1, which is not considering your vision, couple it with new criteria for looking for a practice, which is growth opportunities. And so when we look at a practice now, like, I mean, and like the practice doing $1 million at $800,000 of debt, if you grow it, if you double it in size to $2 million in collections, you still only have $800,000 in debt. Right. And so your income is so much higher because you're not paying debt service. So like let's use an example here. You have 2 practices. One is $1 million with $800,000 as a purchase price. The other one is $2 million in collections with $2 million as a purchase price. If I feel that practice 1, the $1 million with $800,000 of debt that I would take, if I feel like within a year it has all the tools I need to double it to $2 million versus the $2 million practice is pretty maxed out.
Oh yeah.
You would take the smaller one doing $1 million at $800,000 of debt, but that I feel confident I can double in size. Yeah. And now so the impact of that is debt on the $800,000.
What it's going to be, not what it is.
Exactly. Yeah. $800,000 is the amount of debt that is like potentially $9,000 a month. If I'm buying a practice for $2 million, paying $2 million for it, I'm like $17,000 a month of a debt service payment. And so I'm all for buying the $2 million practice if you feel like you can grow it even further than that. But if you're planning on keeping it at its size, $2 million is a relatively achievable number with buying like a high opportunity 1 to 1.5 million in collections practice. If you want a $2 million practice, I would say the better move would be to buy one from 1 to 1.5 and growing it to 2. And therefore that extra $10,000 a month that you're not paying in debt service is yours forever for 10 years. Yeah. So that's the mistake we made in season 2 was we focused so much on the mathematics and the valuation and the percentage of EBITDA and the net income. And the thing we totally missed, like when I bought my practice, the only expenses that stayed the same were facility.
Right.
Everything else changed because I grew the thing. And so we're a high growth philosophy. And so we like high growth. And so we analyze that's ownership or that's pre-ownership through our new ownership lens of like, oh, well, I'm going to buy, we have, I actually got it wrong. So in the webinar, I talked about Jason Katie. So Jason Katie, I said that they had $600,000 in debt. They actually had $300,000 in debt on their practice. And they bought it in the 600s. It was like doing 600-ish in revenue. And, now I think we have their goal in 21 at like 1.7, 1.8, something like that. And, the net worth jump that they got for growing a practice from 600 to 1.7 is so financially beneficial and took them like a year. So to spend that first year of ownership aggressively growing your practice puts you in a cash flow situation for the next 9 years of your practice note that is so much more advantageous. Right. It's worth it to try to find the one that you feel like you can grow quickly and then use a philosophy that will grow it quickly.
Yeah. And one thing I was going to say about that extra $10,000 that's yours forever that you just mentioned, that's also more fuel for the fire, right? So that's something you can be pouring into marketing, something that could help grow that practice so that it pays more dividends later. Yeah. And it's easier to more aggressively grow that practice than it is the 2 to 2 thing.
4 months ago, 5 months ago, something like that, I had an offer for $2 million on a practice, right? I'm not saying don't buy that practice, but I bought it at 2 because I felt it was underperforming at 2, or I did not buy it actually. The deal did not go through, but I offered at 2, trying to buy it at 2 because I felt I could expand it to 12 ops. There was a space in there that I felt like I could get from 6 to 12 ops, and they had the new patient flow where I feel like I could get that to 5. And then getting a $5 million practice is challenging, but I felt like they had the unique ingredients to do it. So I was willing to pay $2 million for that because I felt like I could quickly grow it to 5. And where we view valuation as an exercise in this whole equation in our new understanding is you find the practice that fits your vision as 1, then it can grow quickly into your vision 2. Then, and only then, do you do a valuation to see if the purchase price is justifiable. You see that big difference? We're not picking the practice based on the difference between perceived value and purchase price. We're buying it based on, does it fit my vision? Is it going to quickly grow? Because growth is what makes all the numbers way better, and it's what makes your debt service seem insignificant. And then if I get the growth opportunity and everything involved, then I only then will I see if the purchase price is justifiable. So I'm going to give you another example. So I had to pass on so I'll talk about practices I passed on. So I passed on Tyler, is that okay if I do that? Do you think that's like going to get me in trouble or anything?
Hey, man.
Go for it. All right. So
I have no skin in this game. So
I came across a $1.4 million practice that I felt was severely underperforming based on a number of patient flow they had, the new patient flow, how far booked out their hygiene department was, kind of the things we like to look for.
Yep.
And then it had enough operatories to be doing a lot more. So I felt like we could quickly grow it. But the issue was it didn't cash flow. And so the purchase price, we couldn't cash flow it. And so we couldn't buy it, even though it had all those other things, because at the purchase price, it was doing 1.4, seller asking 1.2. And at 1.2, it does not cash flow. So that's the new understanding of how we use all of those ingredients. And it still might not be a good deal. So in the old language of old season 2, we'd look at this $1.4 million practice and we'd say, oh, it's worth much less, pass. In our new understanding, it fits my vision. It definitely could grow, but the purchase price, there's not enough cash flow to justify the purchase price, so I have to pass.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Yeah, I love all that. And one thing that I like to kind of like, we have like the simple phrases that people kind of like tag on to. And I think one thing we used to say a lot of times was buying the right practice will confer, like buy the right practice. And I think that now it's not so much about buying the right practice, it's buying the right path. Like we choose paths and like we have an ideal practice, but we're choosing one that's going to give us a path that we like to get to that ideal practice. It's very rare that we just like buy into the one that we necessarily want. A lot of times
I love that. That's the first time I've heard that. Have you been saying that on TPO?
I've said it many times.
And I'm an avid listener of TPO, and so I've heard it many times. I wanted to act like it was my first time for the audience.
You're playing the fool, and I appreciate it.
Oh, I love that, Tyler. Yes.
Yeah, what can I say?
In the path.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Yes. You know, and it is that, exactly that, right? You're picking the path you want to your ideal practice. Correct. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's golden.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. First time I heard that.
Well, I'm just distilling what you just said. I mean, I think you put it wonderfully too in greater detail.
Wow.
But to expound on that just a little bit, to make it a little more material, how do people know if practice is capable of that sort of growth that we're talking about?
Yeah. So you look at new patient flow is one of the big things. The other thing you look at is number of operatories. Then you look at, so there's two types of like large operatory practices. There's ones, okay, so you essentially like, I guess we sort of just know, what practices, and this is, I think a lot of the analytics work that we do, we then apply it to acquisitions. We look at them that way. So we can, like the same way we know if a coaching client has explosive growth potential, we can know that acquisition has that. But it's essentially like, how active is your hygiene department? That's the biggest one. How underperforming or overperforming is the doctor's, converted essentially hygiene percentage, if it's a higher hygiene percentage. So I think the two things that you look at is the three things: new patient flow, hygiene percentage as like a very 10,000 foot view, and then looking at your patient flow, and so is my hygiene, like, can I make, like, how much overdue recall essentially do I have? Like you look at like how many active patients do they have compared to how many are up to date on the recare, and how many of them are coming for cleanings and all that. And that's part of the due diligence process where we'll find opportunities. And so that's like, that's financial due diligence, right? That's what people pay for when they work with our coaching department for that. So like, but that's essentially what we're looking for.
Okay. Yeah.
So, like, I think that's what everyone else, like accountants, like, I love ragging on accountants. But like you give an accountant a practice eval to do, and they'll do season 2, right? They'll say, practice is worth this, priced at this, yay or nay. But like a coaching department, yeah, we do the accounting thing too. Like it's pretty easy, right? You get the practice is worth this, it's priced at this, but then it's like, these are the opportunities to grow your practice. And I think it's that piece of like number of operatories, vision, like all the other components of financial due diligence as a whole. Like that's financial due diligence, but then there's just due diligence as a whole. And it includes vision, number of ops, patient flow, is this going to be a quick path to your ideal practice? That's the piece that accountants and finance only people miss all the time. Bankers too.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the only caveat to that I would add is that when we're looking at new patient flow, obviously we have to be comparing that against what sort of marketing efforts are currently being made, right? So like it may not just be the number that I'm given, but like let's say it's 25 new patients a month, and I know that they are just dumping money into marketing. Like I see billboards everywhere, and they're on the street, and they got a nice sign up front, and there's ads and all this stuff. They got 25 new patients a month. That would concern me a lot more than an
Yes.
office that's got 25 new patients a month and is kind of just like word of mouth and
Yes.
like has a lot of other avenues for that sort of thing, and we can sort of project some growth there as well.
Yeah, exactly. Like a metric you would look at is like dollars per new patient.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. If we could put a number on that, that's good. Yeah. Yeah. That's wonderful. So let me make one more clarification to this whole point. So prior to due diligence, prior to being able to get that granular and generate those sorts of numbers, what can someone just from the 10,000-foot view say, all right, this practice looks like it can grow? Like, are there just like a few, like 3 bullet points that you can just look at something and say, this is good?
I would say a practice with 2 hygienists and 1 dentist.
Great.
I would take every day of the week.
Great. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's solid, man. Yeah. I like it to make a one dumb rule.
Yeah. That one dumb rule like that doesn't work all the time, but works just enough so it's dangerously accurate. So you think it works all the time is 1 hygienist, 2 dentists, or sorry, 2 hygienists, not the other way around. 2 hygienists, 1 dentist. Yeah. That's an ideal practice. Usually those are our best bets. Like the $800,000 practice with 2 hygienists and 1 dentist is the best buy in dentistry, I would say.
And would you clarify that to say 8 or 10 hygiene days?
Yes. So 4 days a week, 2 hygienists every day, 8 hygiene days, $800,000 in collections, priced at $650K with 1 dentist with 8 ops is the best buy in dentistry.
You heard it here, folks.
Yeah,
that's good. I love what you just said. That snippet is golden. That's good.
Yeah. So Jason, Katie, they bought a practice doing $600K with 2 hygienists 4 days a week with 8 ops priced at 300 something.
Bam. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. And you wonder why a year later they're almost doing 2 million. Like, right path, right process, right mindset, patient people, very driven entrepreneurs. Yeah. Good things.
And that's also, I mean, that sounds like a practice that would be accessible to students fairly, right? Like
that practice was very unique. So I would say most of those practices are doing 800 priced at 650 or 700 or doing 900 or even a million, 1.1. Like they're not like priced that was a very unique situation that they walked into.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was a very poorly performing practice, very old dentist. It was an associate. It was very, very terrible situation. So that's not a common thing. They got lucky.
Right. That's the unicorn.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, right. It would have normally been doing 800 priced at 650. That was like you see that one all the time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, man, that's great. I love that formula for like the best buy in dentistry. That's brilliant.
No, I've felt that way for a long time. That is the best buy in dentistry. I mean, my practice, right? The practice I walked into was doing 1.1 with 2 dentists, 2 hygienists. Essentially the same thing. It was a 2 hygienist practice, but it just had 2 dentists, so they're doing a little bit more. And so I paid a little bit more, but I essentially got the same thing. If that is 8 ops, right? Same thing.
Yeah. I think there's one more thing that must be addressed if we're going to talk about, the sacred cows that now need to be roasted.
Startups?
Yeah.
Is that where we're going?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Under no circumstances ever. I think I'm going to say that. Okay. Not.
Only Sith deal in absolutes.
Okay. I still do not support the 4 to 6 operatory or any less than 6 operatory startup. Unless there is literally no practice, not a single one, owned by anybody 50 years or older in driving distance from where you want to live. So that's like I'm going to the middle of Kansas.
Okay. I follow. Yeah.
And there is no dentist in this entire town of 10,000 people. And I want to live in this middle of nowhere, Kansas. And I want to own a practice in this town of 10,000. And I only want to work by myself and be a solo dentist. I will support a 5 operatory startup.
Okay.
And here's my beef with it. If you are going to do a startup, you are investing an extra year in the process of opening. Then you're investing an extra year in like gaining patience at
Mhm.
minimum. So you're investing 2 extra years front loading this process.
Yeah.
Why are we not building more ops?
Yeah.
If you do that well, you should have the potential to be a large group practice. The thing you can't find with ease is larger acquisitions. So,
Right. Absolutely.
and you
Yeah.
have the new patient flow. That's the idea behind a startup, is you put it in a place where you're going to get the new patient flow. But like a 5-op startup, I just really can't get behind it, because why don't you just buy a 5-op practice? Like,
Yeah.
I don't get that one.
Yeah.
But then again, the caveat is, if you want to have like Ashley Hovis has like the Smile & Co., right? Like it's this like very unique office.
It's boutique. It's boutique.
Yeah, very boutique, and like you can't acquire that. Like
Yeah.
that's unique, right?
Yeah.
You have to start that. But like seriously, I cannot get behind. Please, if you're listening to this and you're doing a startup, get a bigger space, get more TI monies, build more ops. Don't equip them, but build them.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah.
Like
Not saying don't do it. Just do it a little bigger. If you're going to do it bigger.
3, you could tell by my tone, I was saying, why am I doing this season? Don't do a startup. In hindsight, I've realized startups actually have to have perpetual high new patient flow based on your location is very desirable if you want a group practice. If you want a solo office, it's unnecessarily good. So,
yeah.
Why not fully capitalize on all the work you're doing?
Right.
A 5-op
go
practice
through all that trouble.
is the same amount of work as a 10-op practice. Why not just build 10 ops? And I don't want to be this, I would not say publicly and put my name behind. But if I was doing a startup as my first practice, there's no way it's less than 10 ops. Yeah. 10 ops would be the number I'd go for.
Yeah.
Because 10, you can have 3 dentists there at once.
Mm-hmm.
There's a big difference between 8 and 10. So 8, you can only have 2 there at once. Once you get 10 ops, there are times when you can, with the schedule and things you can do, you can have 3 dentists there at one time. So it's a minor amount of extra space and construction costs. But I would say, if you're going to do a startup in a metro area, if you don't want a 10-op practice and you don't want associates and stuff, then buy a practice. But if you want that stuff, then build 10 ops. Yeah. I don't see an in-between in a metro area, to be honest. And this is an area I will be stubborn. I'm sure. But I'm sure there are in-betweens. And we have clients that have done startups that are doing well, and they're 5 and 6 ops and all that stuff. And I don't harp on this on the phone with them, or when we're on mastermind calls and stuff. But at the end of the day, I really don't agree with it.
Yeah. It's just that the marginal cost of building it out bigger and giving yourself more room to grow it's silly to kind of turn that down.
Why does somebody, every time you ask somebody, every time there was a Practice Underwater guest, I don't want to say his name because I don't know if it's real or fake, but I always forget if it's a fake name or real name. But anyway, this guy, he builds a 5-op practice, and Matt asks him, he goes, why didn't you build bigger? He goes, oh, well, rent here is very expensive. Right? That's always what they say. It's like, oh, the rent is too expensive. Or they'll say, oh, it's too much cost to build. Right? What did we just talk about? About taking financial risks and getting uncomfortable. Right. That's poor vision. Mm-hmm. And it's poor vision and poor leadership. Vision is part of leadership. That's poor leadership and vision due to your inability to become financially uncomfortable.
Right.
So that's how that plays out. Startup people are so worried about seeing patients and hitting that they're scarce minded. So they make these scarcely sized practices, and then they hit, and now they have this problem of not enough ops.
Yeah.
So let's just label the scarcity as fear and say, if I can't figure out how to market, I will keep trying new strategies until I get new patients. And then I will build an adequately sized office.
Right.
So that's when I think startups, when done well, I agree with. I just very much disagree with the majority of the ways people do them.
Okay. Very well. Yeah, no, I like the point that you make about sort of belaying the discomfort of building that larger practice at the front. And then you're almost committing yourself to discomfort down the road, because now you don't have as many options as you would have.
I start cutting insurance now, and I got to split shift, and I got to work from till 7 p.m. because I got to fit enough patients and providers in this practice that has 5 ops, because I didn't want to take on a risk financially when I opened it up.
Yeah.
I don't agree with that philosophy. I don't know how that's such an industry standard, but I don't agree with it.
Yeah. And then you're just eyeballs deep in discomfort. And
yeah. I'll label a little bit of fear at the beginning, say, okay, this is scary. I'm really taking a risk, but I really believe in myself and my vision. and
Right.
I'll get a 10 op startup. And then when I hit and I have all the new patients, I have space and I can start equipping ops, and maybe even so like, partitioning part of the office and not even building it out at all, but just like designing in your floor plan, like, okay, we'll then take on more build out cost here, and negotiating your lease cleverly. Like there's ways around this. Don't tell me there are not, because there are.
Yeah.
So this is my issue with the startup crowd. And I don't communicate with them a whole lot. So it's not like I'm in the startup world. I'm not on the startup groups or anything. So I don't want to fight that battle. But those are my honest thoughts about it.
Yeah, that's great. That's really good. Yeah.
You can tell I'm not excited or passionate about that at all, right? There's no emotion behind it. I mean, it's funny. I do this thing on Facebook every time, not every time, but I've done it like a few times. Somebody posts this beautiful office, just like most amazing operatories. You can tell they spent way too much money on the build out for their practice.
Smell the air freshener.
And yeah, exactly. You could smell the, what's it called that everyone uses? The startup group has all these products, Air Fresh or whatever the thing is that they all like pay way too much money for good smelling offices. And
warm towels
everyone, all the comments are like, everyone loves it. They love Reacts, and all the comments, so beautiful, looks great, gorgeous. And I always ask, how many ops? ? And I submit it. And they always, last time I did that, they responded 4. And I was like, okay. And I don't say anything, right? I'm not being a jerk, but at the same time, like, come on. How many ops? 4. Okay. As in, yeah. Like,
I'll take away my wow react. Thanks.
I don't wow react. I only ask how many ops ?
Yeah.
And then they say 4, and I feel like it says everything it needs to say, and I don't even respond.
Yeah. Just a little bit of soul crushing.
Yeah. I really can't stand. That is my pet peeve. And the reason it bothers me so much is because of how commonly how common that mistake is. Why is our industry make that mistake every day, all the time? Like, that drives me nuts.
Yeah.
That's really hard to get behind.
Yeah. There's just appearances there. But
yeah. So anyway, sorry for the reaction, audience, and sorry for all the people with 4 op startups that I'm talking to right now. This is one that really gets me. And I feel like the audience owes it for me to fully share all my biases, and they can take them or leave them. If you don't, I'm not right on everything, right? We just talked about everything we've been wrong on. So I'm sure that maybe one day there's stuff I'm wrong on. I don't think it's going to be this one, but like, you never know. So,
for a moment, I thought we were reaching out an olive branch to season 2 and saying, you know what, this is when the startup's okay. But then it just got really acrimonious as the conversation went on.
I talked about when startups are okay.
No, I know. They are.
You can do the 4 to 6 op startup, and then in a metro area, believe in yourself and do something bigger. I feel like that's encouraging.
Right. Be bold.
Yeah, be bold. Believe in your success.
Yeah. And the startup journey is a bold one anyway.
Success is inevitable. Proceed as if success is inevitable.
Oh.
Right? Proceed as if your startup is going to hit, and build the one you actually want as opposed to the one that you're barely comfortable with financially.
Man.
There's your encouraging word, startup folks.
There we go.
Let's drop mic and end it.
I wanted to end on something positive with regards to season 2 so that we can put that.
You're saying season 2, season 3.
Sorry, season 3. You know what I meant. Audience knows what I mean.
They don't.
Yeah, so wow, that's a good spread. I think we covered some really strong stuff.
Yeah, we covered seasons 1, 2, 3, and 5. I think that was super solid.
Yeah. Anything on 4? Anything on case acceptance?
No, but I think we should.
It, right?
I think we nailed case acceptance. I thought that was pretty good. I think we nailed case acceptance.
How about in the context of TPO? Is there anything we can add on that? Because I've honestly, I've never really gone into case acceptance.
Getting uncomfortable. I think that goes back to, again, being willing to have the uncomfortable conversation. So I think seasons 4 and 5 are very closely linked in their ability in discussing discomfort and getting over discomfort to apply those skills. So I think that's something we've sort of already addressed, seasons 1 through 5. But I think that for our audience, to see why we do the pursuit of ownership, let's end it where we started, right? Why are we doing the pursuit of ownership? Why is this something we release every Wednesday ongoing? It's because as we grow and change, and we're always finding out new things, we're always making mistakes, and we're always learning as us at Shared Practices, we owe it to our audience to revisit topics continuously. And so I'm really proud of Tyler and what we've done, because a lot of the pre-owner underwaters have shed and have exposed our new mindset as opposed to our old one. And so I actually, impressive enough, I would say that Tyler understands analytics-based practice management, the practice management philosophy as a dental student, on a very high level, like top 3 or 4 people at Shared Practice that understand that concept. So really, really cool. And he spent a lot of time with the course that I'm building and understanding the principles of it and teaching the TPO task force some of that stuff, because it has impacted his ability to look at pre-ownership differently.
Yeah.
And that he understands what I mean when I say pre-ownership through the ownership lens. So can you talk a little bit about analytics-based practice management, that concept that, as learning it, how that's changed your perspective on practice ownership?
Well, I'll preface that by saying that I take a lot of notes, and I like to make outlines for everything I go through. When I first started here, I did the beta version of the Ownership Accelerator,
Yeah.
and I did an outline of that, and I believe that was 48 pages.
Wow.
When I went through Implant Pathway, I took a copious notes, of course, sessions 1 through 4. I think that was north of 56 pages.
Okay.
And I took notes when you sort of demoed the analytics-based practice management course to.
It was two of the 14 lectures, right? That you saw. You saw 2 hours of it. You saw 2 hours.
I got the first half. I couldn't get the last half. Something happened with the second. We won't name any names. But that alone, that alone, I believe, was about 70 pages.
70?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Mm-hmm. I think I need to. A lot of it, to be fair, a lot of it was screenshots. I do like a lot of screen capping.
And you do that on all of your things. So like 50 pages Implant Pathways, a lot of screenshot stuff too.
Yeah.
So I remember you and I had a large discussion. We had like an hour and a half, 2 hour discussion after that. So Tyler got a 2 hour lecture that I had given.
Right.
And I think we had like an hour and a half or 2 hours of discussion afterwards where you needed help unpacking things. And it helped me realize that I need to deliver the content slower. So
much of it was me trying to work my way through the things that you would say in like one sentence.
Yeah.
And then I'd be like, oh, wait, I need to really break that down and make that easier for my brain to understand and concurrently for like an audience to understand. So a lot of it is just further extrapolating the points that you're making in a way that can make sense, like, sort of practice-based analytics for dummies in a way.
Yeah. And that's where...
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, I had to chew on this stuff so much. I've never had to just pause and think about things going through courses. Like most courses I can watch in like 2 times and I'm just like processing it. This was like a real, like this is all my focus. I really need to slow this down and work this through my mind and almost like just have a conversation with myself where I explain what George just said to myself. And that's how dense it was. And it was just numbers. It was awesome.
So the reason why we do this is because the goal of the course is to change the way you think about practice ownership.
Right.
And we do that by using analytics to inform our practice. So analytics has informed our practice management philosophy. And so we use the course's outline to show you our practice management philosophy and using analytics to show you why we feel the way we feel about things. And so the goal when you listen to the course or when you take the course is that you sit there and think, I've never thought of it that way. That makes a lot of sense, but I've never thought of it that way. That's what we go for, is like that sentence. And what we realized in the initial iteration of it is that we delivered it too quickly and we have to unpack and re-explain things. So I've actually reworked it already once and I'm reworking it again a second time to make sure that we actually like do it slow enough so that like we give that reaction we're going for of like helping them along the process of the way we think about things. Because we just think about them that way, but we actually have to like help someone understand, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, so to actually talk about the course itself, I mean, without getting into getting too specific about it, I mean, it sort of taught me about what actually is going on in your mind when you're looking at a dashboard.
Yeah.
Right. And like you can spit these things out on practice underwater, and I'm like, okay, yeah, that number's supposed to be that, and this is the number they have, and obviously that number needs to go up because this is considered ideal. But understanding how that actually fits in the bigger picture, in the bigger context of practice growth, understanding things like, you're looking at what next month looks like instead of this month because production we're making this month is taking food off the table. I'm interested in what we're putting back on the table and how we're actually growing. You may have a really, really big month and you're actually mad because you see the next month is not as big, or you see that there's a dip in something and something is breaking. That's the kind of stuff that is just so revolutionary because you are operating your practice in the future, and you're doing it through analytics. You're doing it like it's the stock market, and that's what I like about it. Is it's really taking analytics to a new level of, this isn't just KPIs and like trying to normalize these numbers. It's looking at growth trends and understanding how to predictably know where your practice is going to be at in a month, in 2 months, in 3 months, knowing how these things are trending, and being able to anticipate that sort of growth and make more informed decisions about how you're growing and how things are being, how they're working. And that is it's just so transformative. And I never truly understood that until you were able to really quantify it and say formulaically, this is how I figured this out.
Yeah. And I love that because, most dentists run their practice as like production, collections, new patients. They check, like you typically see your production at the end of the month. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like the first baby step in analytics is like, okay, now I see my production before the month is over. I see what I'll finish at. And then the next step where we typically lie is like, we're not even this month. By the time this month has started, it's already happened in our mind. We're focused on the future at all times. And if we're handling the future appropriately, the present takes care of itself.
Right.
And it's that concept of running your practice in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And then the present sort of just takes care of itself.
Yeah. And you're not the whim of the day to day. You have a game plan. You know your opponent's move before it happens.
Exactly.
And I think that's just what's so incredibly powerful about it. I mean, it's just like, it's like the limitless pill. Like Bradley Cooper takes a little clear pill and then he just like takes over the world. This is kind of what it feels like. You're doing the limitless thing. And I think this is one of those things that's going to redefine average. I think that by empowering people to look through this stuff and grow their practices in the future and understand what's really happening in the practice and not just looking at the day sheets. I think that's one thing that's really going to step the game up for dentistry abroad. Just whoever manages to take some financial risk at varying levels, depending on where you're at in your career, and implement these things in your practices. I mean, the macro effect of this is just going to be huge.
And really now, do you see now why it takes 2 days to explain it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it took me 2 days to get through this 2-hour video. Yeah, because I kept having to pause and digest, because if I just try to get through it, I knew I was just going to lose 80% of the information. So absolutely. I mean, you got to get spoon fed this stuff.
Yeah,
for sure.
So that's why people are wondering.
Yeah, like you, the analytics guy,
but like, it took me like a year to learn it.
Right, exactly. Like it took you that long to figure it out.
A year of operating a practice and like figuring all these little things out one by one and making mistakes, learning from them. So to give it in 2 days, I think is really impressive. But it's a lot to give in 2 days, and I'm really, really excited to do it. Yeah. So this is, if you don't know what we're talking about, this is July 9th and 10th in Minneapolis, event.sharedpractices.com. We're doing an event where I'm actually doing this analytics extraction management course. Go ahead, Tyler.
Yes. Just one little last bit of promo that I want to get out of you. If you could shrink down that whole, year, 2 years that it took you to formulate this and put this course together, and you could gift this course to George in the past when he bought this practice, how would things have been different?
Oh my gosh. Ugh. That's frustrating to think about for me, to be honest. So when people ask me or they complain about the cost of coaching, I find it to be the most almost offensive thing. And I'm not like offended that they don't value the product we sell. It's that you have no idea how much I would have paid for what we do now for $2,500 a month. You have no idea how much I would have paid back then for that. Like more than double. And I mean, I cost myself $225,000 in a year of marketing that didn't work because of stuff I had to learn. Like no one spent more on the course than me. I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on that course, it's very frustrating to like Jason, Katie. I tell them all the time, I'm like, you guys for me are like the annoying ones that you got the easy path, that they bought a practice very similar. And so it's like, it's very frustrating for me to see sometimes just how easy it is for others because of the mistakes. Cause I had the terrible years and the like accountants telling me it's not going to work and people telling me I'm going down the wrong road and I'm being too brash and too aggressive and it's not going to grow. And I had that and it sucked so bad. Yeah. So, I mean, there is part of me that as much as I enjoy giving back and creating change and all the stuff that we're doing, there is part of me that doesn't go there very often, where I won't think about, young me just buying a practice or even so I think about it the other way. Like I'm doing a Dental Town thread now, sort of recapitulating my whole journey. Right. And I'm like, if I had shared practices as a D1, like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I'd find a way to be an intern. Like, like, yeah, if I was a D1 and shared practices existed at what we have now, it would be incredible. So,
Yeah.
that's kind of, and Suzanne actually noticed that about me. She goes, "You're always creating the thing that you wanted." And yes, I am always
Right.
creating the thing I wanted. That is sort of my driving. That's my little thing that's like my ticking thing, is I'm creating the thing I didn't have for someone else.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to think too, is that, with all the efforts you're making, despite all the wild success that you've had that we brag about so much, like, you are currently creating the next George, right? The
Yeah.
next George is a D1 right now,
Yeah.
and they're going to invest in this kind of stuff, and they're going to learn analytics-based practice management, and then they're going to kill it, and they're going to be the next, like, really huge, crazy success story that people brag about. That's going to be the next, like, 28-year-old that has like a $3 million practice. Like, I have no question.
That's pretty cool. I never thought about it that way. That's awesome, man.
I mean, yeah, he's out there. He's a D1 somewhere.
That's cool. Well, yeah, I won't think about that a whole lot.
Or she's a D1 somewhere. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It could definitely be a girl too.
Yeah, but anyway, I don't want this to be too much of a promotional thing, so let's just wrap it up.
Yeah, I know. We did a lot of that. I will wrap it up by saying that, the feelings that you have about not having access to that as a D1 are kind of like me thinking about what I could have invested in Bitcoin when it was at like 3K. I think about that all the time, and it's like, man, Tyler, you just did not. You didn't see it. You didn't see the forest for the trees, and you could have been so much wealthier.
All right. Well, I appreciate you guys. And Tyler, let's close on this.
Please.
1 year TPO.
Yeah.
Thank you from everyone at Shared Practices and everyone in the audience for, I hear so much about your ability to interview, and the questions you ask, and always staying concerned about the audience member. And so thank you for everything you do for this segment to carry on what is a big part of our audience is pre-ownership. So thank you for everything you do, from myself, everyone at Shared Practice in the audience.
Thank you. That means a lot to me. Obviously I really appreciate the opportunity and the trust that was involved in that. And thank you so much to the audience as well. I still, it never really sinks in that we're the most downloaded segment on the show, even as much as I like to quote it to George. And the support that I've gotten from students and newer dentists around the country that send me messages and look to me for help and give that sort of deference to me. It's humbling because I know it's not all mine, but at the same time, I'm really, really grateful to be in the position I'm in, and I'm happy to keep on doing this. And I'm happy to have Peyton by my side. He couldn't be here today. He was a little bit busy in clinic, but yeah, I'm just really grateful to be doing this. And man, 1 year was a blur. A lot happened and outside of the podcast during that time. It was a pretty tumultuous year, but I'm definitely looking forward to the next year. I'm looking to see how the segment grows.
Awesome. See you guys next episode on The Pursuit of Ownership.